Hello, and welcome to Science Ocean Mission Day 4. Alright, we are going to do the experiment for Jonah. It's called Sink and Float. For this experiment, you are going to need your cup of salt. You're going to need a cup of water. This is a cup we've used throughout the week. We're going to need a spoon and different objects to test. Basically, our main idea is that we're going to be experimenting and making an educated guess about what we think will happen. And that's what this sheet is for, what the hypothesis sheet is for. So, looking at the goldfish toy, do you think it will float or sink in our plain tap water? Now, we each have different experiences. Maybe you have a goldfish toy like this, and so you know whether it will float or sink. Maybe you have goldfish toys that aren't like this, but might be similar enough that you can still make a guess. Maybe you just know what plastic does normally. If you don't know anything, that's fine as well. Just make your best educated guess with the information you do have. So your educated guess might be something different than the person next to you who's guessing, and that's alright too. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and fill this out, so go ahead and pause the video and fill that out. Alright, now that you have your hypothesis sheet all filled out, again, it doesn't matter what it says, does not need to match mine. We're just going to set that aside, well, we're going to keep it ready to write on, because after the hypothesis comes our observed result. So the goldfish toy is first on our list. Go ahead and pick it up. And it helps to open up the back fin because it catches air. Ready? Okay, so it sank. So go ahead and write sink or sank on your sheet. Okay, now let's do the plastic coin. Oh, it sank too! Alright, so let's take a look at our sheet. So, the goldfish toy I thought would sink, because it seemed kind of heavy to me. If you didn't think so, that's fine. And it did. So on that we agreed. And I was proven correct on that. Now, the plastic coin I thought would float. It seemed really light to me, but that's okay. It was actually apparently more dense than the water. Density and weight are two different things. And it sunk pretty quickly, so I'm going to write that down. And then our crayon. Okay, so our crayon. It sunk too! Man, everything is sinking. And then, let's see about the pony bead. Will it sink too? It's floating! We have one floater. Okay, now go ahead and try whatever you wanted to try and make sure to write it down. Now once that you've tried that, we're going to fish out the items that we tested, dry them off. That's what the towel and the napkins are helpful for. Right, now just the crayon. Alright, now we're going to make this water into salt water. And by using the same size cup, the same amount of water, we're keeping a consistent variable between the freshwater test and the saltwater test. And that makes our experiment mean a bit more. Alright, let's go ahead and add the salt. Alright. Now before we do any testing, we need to make sure that it's as stirred in as possible. So I'm just going to be stirring this for a while. I'll let you get to it too, and we'll come back when things look a little bit clearer, okay? Alright, that's more like what I'm talking about. There's still a little grittiness at the bottom, but that's okay. You can see the spoon a lot better than when we first added the salt, and that's really good. So our salt water is ready to go. So we're going to go through the experiment again. starting with the goldfish. And it's sunk again. Alright, so go ahead and write it down. So the only difference between this experiment and the last experiment is the water, or is the salt that we added. And so the kind of water that we have. And the density of the water. Alright, plastic coin. It floated! It changed! So, the coin is less dense than the salt water, but more dense than the fresh water. Okay, paper clip. Let's see. What do you think? Still sank really quickly. Now crayon. It floated too! Cool. So it is also less dense than the salt water, but more dense than the fresh water. Ah! Bony bead. And it's still floating. Cool. Alright, so that's our experiment. It's just exploring the different things and how the densities work. But also it's a great practice for how science works. The salt water was our manipulated variable, or the salt that we put in the water was our manipulated variable, because it's what's changed, is the water itself, and how dense it is. Everything else was the same things we tried to float, the same amount of water, the same cup, and that way we could really tell that it was the salt water that was affecting it. Now, as you can see, some of these didn't turn out like I thought they would. I really thought the crayon would sink in all of the cases, but it actually floated in salt water. And so things rarely work out like we think they should. And that's true in science and also in life, as Jonah found out. So I hope you've enjoyed this experiment. Feel free to test some other things as long as your responsible adult is willing to let you. And remember, clean up your lab space.